Cool guys, so question 2 of the grade 12 June 2025 math paper 2 exam, 2.1, it is saying in the figure below the line 2x minus y plus 1 equals 0. Okay, 2x minus y plus 1 equals 0 is a tangent to the circle with center M, A and B at G, 2 and 5. They've drawn the 90 degree over here, which is going to help us considering a tangent is perpendicular to the radius. That is a Euclidean rule. The center of the circle lies on the line x plus y equals 9. So we have this line over here. So 2.1.1, determine the gradient of GM. Only 2 marks. So the gradient of GM has something or everything to do with this line because we don't have the coordinate M yet. That is only coming up later, which means we have to manipulate this straight line equation and then do the M1 times M2 equals -1 because this gradient over here, once we unwrap it, our y over there equals 2x plus 1. So this line is 2x plus 1 is the intercept over here, 0 and 1. And then what we have is a gradient of 2, which means 2 times m2 equals -1. And then divide by 2, which means m2 is -1 over 2, which means the gradient of gm is -1 over 2. And that is our final answer. So then 2.1.2, it says determine the equation of gm in the form y equals mx plus c. Also only 2 marks here, which means we have to just plug in this gradient we calculated into this equation and then plug this x and this y coordinate into there. And then we can solve for c and then we can have our equation. So y equals -1 over 2 x plus c over here. And then the y value is 5 over there equals -1 over 2 x is 2 over here. So we can plug that in plus c. What we have is -1/2 times 2 is -1, 5 is over here, plus c is over here. Take our 1 over, c equals 6, and then therefore y equals -1 over 2 x plus 6. And that is our final answer. And then question 2.1.3 over here, calculate the coordinates of M. So we need M. M is a point on this equation, GM. A reminder that we just calculated the equation of GM or determined the equation for an important reason. These are all follow-on questions, which means GM and this tangent over here, this guy with the equation of y equals -x plus 9. M is the one point in time where GM and this line going through here intersect, which means we can just make them equal each other, and then from there we can calculate the coordinates of M. So what we do when we equate them, a reminder that our equation for GM was y equals -1 over 2x plus 6. So then we're just going to make this guy -1 over 2x plus 6 equal this other line over here, equal the -x plus 9. So at this stage, we're going to take the more negative value over. So we're going to have 0.5x over here, and then we're going to take this +6 over there, and we're left with 3 over there. And then if we divide by 1/2 on both sides, we end up with a value for x, the a value over here, as 6. So that is what we achieved by equating the two graphs. And then we need to go ahead and plug in the 6 into either one of these graphs to get their y value. So if we just plug it in here into y equals bracket -6 over here plus 9 equals -6 plus 9, we have y equals 3 over there, which means our equation over here for M is in coordinate form 6 and 3. Cool. And that is our final answer. On the memo, it said that if we didn't put it in coordinate form, we would lose a mark. So just a reminder that whenever they ask for coordinates, put it in coordinate form. And then question 2.1.4, hence or otherwise calculate the length of the radius of the circle. Okay, so the length of the radius of the circle. So we just calculated A was 6, B was 3, which means we can just do the distance formula for GM, and then we can have the distance, the length of the radius, because GM is the radius of the circle. So then our distance formula, distance squared equals 2 minus 6 squared plus 5 minus 3 squared. And then we're going to solve some values. We're going to square root this as well. So we're going to square root it. So we just have the radius. 2 minus 6 is -4. -4 squared is 16. And then this guy here, 5 minus 3 is -2. -2 squared is 4, which means we have the square root of 20 over here, which is the same as 2 surd 5, and we can leave our answer there, or we can simplify it to 2 decimal places. Either way is good. This question was leading very nicely into this next one. 2.1.5, write down the equation of the circle in the form x squared plus y squared plus cx plus dy plus e equals 0. So it is 3 marks. They're asking for a specific form, but a reminder that on our formula sheet, we have the equation of a circle. So x minus a squared plus y minus b squared equals r squared. So we just calculated r, and then once we plug in our a and our b, a reminder that our a and our b was this guy and that guy, as well as the r, and we FOIL everything out, we can move everything to one side, and then we will have it in a form like this. So x we're going to leave there. So x minus a, remind our a value was 6 over here, plus y, our b value was 3 over there, squared, and then r was 2 surd 5, 2 surd 5, and squared, which means we can just go ahead and start to expand everything, take it to one side, and we will be done. So x times x is x squared, minus 6 times x times 2 is minus 12x, minus 6 times minus 6 is positive 36, y times y is y squared, minus 3 times y is negative 3 times 2 is minus 6y, and then negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Okay, and then 2 surd 5, that squared is 20, which means we can just simplify everything, taking it over. I'm already going to start putting it in the form that they want with the x squared first, then the y squared following. And then from there, a c and an x. So we have minus 12x. There were no other x's to simplify. A d with a y, so minus 6y. And then plus e. Plus e has no coordinates, which means it's our positive 36 here, our positive 9 over here, and this 20 here. When we take it over, it'll be negative 20. So we can just simplify them. 36 plus 9 is 45, minus 20 is plus 25. And that all equals 0, which means we have it in x squared plus y squared minus cx plus dy, which is also a minus dy, plus e, the value without any x's and y's on it. Cool, guys. And that is our answer there. And then question 2.2 over here, it says determine the equation of the inverse of the tangent to the circle. So we have x squared plus y squared minus 26x plus 12y plus 105 equals 0 at 7 and 2. This is not the same circle. This is a different circle now. This is the equation for our previous circle, and they had different values in terms of x, y, and the e value, the value without any x and y. So this new equation, or this new circle with its own equation, intercepts at 7 and 2. Okay, so that is the point on the circle. And then it says give your answer in the form of y equals mx plus c. So this is a 7-mark question. So let's break it down step by step. So what we need to do is first get this in some sort of standard equation form like this. X minus a squared plus y minus b squared equals r squared. Because right now this is all messy and we need to simplify it a bit so we can figure out another point on it. Because right now we only have the one coordinate pair. And in order to get a gradient at any stage, we'll need 2 coordinates. So we don't have 2 coordinates, but a way that we are going to get the other coordinate pair is by factorizing it, completing the square, so we can get our a and our b, the center of this circle. So I'm just going to rewrite this equation here. We have x squared plus y squared minus 26x plus 12y plus 105 equals 0 at 7 and 2. We want our answer in the form of y equals mx plus c. So that's our question mark. This is our end goal, and then 7 marks. So first things first, in order to get the a and the b value, like this previous equation up here, we have to complete the square. So we're going to rearrange this equation by putting our x's back together, our y's back together, and then taking our r over to this side. So what we're going to do is take this positive 105 over. It is minus 105 over here. And then we have x squared minus 26x. I'm just going to leave some space so we can complete the square, plus y squared plus 12y. So that's a little bit neater. We have the x and the x over there. We have the y squared and the y over here. And we took our 105 over. So we aren't in this form yet, but we have an r in one place at least. So now what we have to do in in order to get our bracket, the x minus a and the y minus b, we're going to have to complete the square. And in order to complete the square, what we do is we divide this guy by 2 and then we square that value. So what that means is we have x squared minus 13x, and then 26 divided by 2 is 13. 13 times 13 is positive 169. So we divided this term by 2 and then we squared it. So we left with 13 and then we squared that value and we put it here without an x, because now we have a nice grouping that we can turn into a bracket like this guy. So then we do the same thing over here. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 6 times 6 is 36 over here, which means we have a nice bracket over here where we have our 6y over here. 12y divided by 2 plus 36 over there equals minus 105. But we're not done. One thing we have to keep in mind is that what we do to one side of the equation, we have to do to the other side of the equation. We're just trying to change the formatting, not the meaning. By that, if we added a positive 169 here, we have to add a positive 169 over here. And if we added the positive 36 here, we have to add a positive 36 to this side. The right side needs to get the same change as the left side. And then at this stage, we can just package this guy up by going x minus 13 squared. If we were to FOIL this and SMS this, we would end up with the same bracket here. And then what we do is plus y plus 6 squared equals, and then we just have to simplify this whole right side. And that all equals positive 100. So at this stage, we have our format. A reminder that this is r squared, which means our radius is just 10 over here. But we have 2 new coordinates that we can then just use to help us get the gradient. If we had a circle like that, we would then have some sort of tangent going to the circle, something like this. Because now we have this coordinate here, this a, this x value for the center of our circle, and this b value, the y value for the center of our circle, and we have this other coordinate pair over here on the circle. So in order to get m, we are just going to use the gradient formula. So we'll have m equals y. So let's go 2 here, minus 6. A reminder that if there's a positive inside our bracket, it means that it's shifting us to the left into the negative land, which means we're somewhere over here in terms of y. And then our x is 7 minus 13, because a reminder that if we have a negative x here, it means we are shifting 13 units to the right. We have some circle, something like this over here, with that being the center of our circle. So now we have this equation set up for our gradient, so we can just calculate it. A reminder, we used the points 7 and 2 over here that was on the graph, as well as the values for the center of the circle, which means 2 minus 6 is 8, 7 minus 13 is minus 6, and then this equals negative 4 over 3. But a reminder that this is just the equation in the circle from our radius to a point on the graph. So let's say something like this, because it's negative 4 over 3. This was our center over here, which was 13 and negative 6. And this was a point on the graph of 7 and 2. That's not looking like 7 and 2, so that's not necessarily where it would be living, but we're just going to put it there for now. So what we need then is the equation of the inverse of the tangent. So we're not dealing with the inverse yet, but we are dealing with a tangent, because just like this guy, where we came from a tangent had a perpendicular gradient to the radius of the circle, which means we're going to have to take this minus 4 over 3 times by m2 and make it equal negative 1, because our tangent is 90 degrees to this radius. So we have that guy over there. So that means our answer for our gradient of our tangent is 3 over 4. And we've just earned 4 marks. We have the gradient of the tangent, but we don't yet have the equation of that tangent, which means we first have to deal with that before we deal with the inverse. So what we have to do is we're going to go y equals 3 over 4 x plus c over here. And then this tangent does not go through this 13 and negative 6. It isn't the radius, but it does go through 7 and 2, this point on the circle. So therefore, we can plug in the 7 and 2 over here into our x and our y value, which means we have 3 over 4 times 7 plus c, and then our y value was 2 over there. So we can just simplify this. 3 over 4 times 7 is 21 over 4 plus c equals 2, and then 2 minus 21 over 4 equals minus 13 over 4. And that is our c value, which means y equals 3 over 4x minus 13 over 4. Okay, but we're not done, which means the final mark is to do the inverse of it, because the inverse is bridging a paper 1 word that we know. When we do the inverse, we swap the x and the y value, which means what we have to do here is first get our x and y a little bit neater, because right now they are mixed fractions and that's not great for us. So if we multiply everything by 4, because there's a common denominator of 4, we have 4y equals 3x minus 13. This makes it a lot neater for us to then swap our x and our y, because we are getting the inverse to this tangent, which means we are swapping the x and the y here, which means we get 4x equals 3y minus 13 over here. And then from there, we can just isolate for y, because we want the equation of the inverse, and then that means we still have to isolate for the y, which means we'll take this negative 13 over here. We'll end up having 4x plus 13 equals 3y, and then we end up with 4 over 3x over here, we're dividing by 3, plus 13 divided by 3, and that equals y. And that is our final answer, getting the inverse for the tangent to this circle. And we have gotten it in the form of y equals mx plus c, and we have just earned 7 marks. Cool, guys. And that is the whole section here. We've just earned 20 marks for question 2. Let me know if there are any questions in the comments below, and otherwise I will see you in the next video.